Hi, welcome to the Christ Center Library. I'm Laure Hittle. I'm the librarian here. Today I'm going to read to you a chapter from this summer's Read Aloud, Henry and the Chalk Dragon by Jennifer Trafton. Jennifer also wrote The Rise and Fall of Mount Majestic, which is our very first Read Aloud. This is Chapter 4, A Lunchbox and a Quest. The door of the bus screeched as it folded up to let Henry on, and screeched again as it unfolded behind him. The bus driver, Mr. Bruce, laughed and slapped his knee. "Sir Henry, you were the shiniest star in the sky this morning." Henry's wearing his armor. When Henry had been in kindergarten, he would sit in the front seat and listen to Mr. Bruce tell stories all the way to school. His favorite was the one about the boy who pulled a sword out of a stone and then grew up to be King Arthur. But Henry was much more grown up now, and would rather be turned into a toad by Merlin than be seen sitting with the kindergartners. He found a seat near the middle of the bus and scrunched up against the window. "Look at him, he's covered in aluminum foil," said Simon Snoot. Simon Snoot was Henry's mortal enemy. If life were a drinking straw, Simon Snoot would be the heel, smushing it flat on the ground. He spent so much time scrunching his face into scornful shapes that it looked like his nose had been smushed. Henry could never think of him as just Simon. He was always Simon Snoot. Simon Snoot elbowed the boy next to him, and their laughter bounced from seat to seat to seat. When Mr. Bruce laughed, it was as if he shared a secret joke with you that no one else would understand. But when the other kids laughed, Henry was the joke, and now all his noble feelings of knightliness vanished. "He looks like a leftover pizza," said one boy. "Is that a milk carton on his head?" said another, giggling. "He's so weird." The bus bumped and burped as it started moving. Henry slumped lower in his seat. "Hi, Henry," said Mary Beth, smiling over the top of the seat in front of him. "That's a nice shiny outfit. What is it?" He could answer Mary Beth, of course, but there was no telling what might come out of his mouth. He could try to say, "I'm a brave knight, and this is my invincible suit of armor," but instead he might hear himself say, "Goof, fresh, tush, boo, gobble, goop head." Henry had learned that words don't always behave themselves around girls. "Can I try on your shiny hat?" persisted Mary Beth. "I'd rather feed you to the dragon," thought Henry. But he remembered his chivalry and began to lift his helmet gently off his head. Before he could give it to her, however, Simon Snoot dropped a cricket down the back of his neck. "Ah!" squealed Henry, which was the most he had said on the school bus all year. The cricket tried desperately to escape from its strange new raincoat prison, and Henry hoped desperately that it would. Finally, it jumped out of his sleeve, crouched on the floor under his seat, and rubbed its legs together in a sad, beautiful song. Laughter echoed around Henry's ears like a kettle drum. "That's what you get for trying to be nice to someone," Henry thought. He sank down into his armor. Armor was supposed to protect you from crickets. A scratchy sentence in black crayon stared back at him from the inside of his raincoat. "Don't stick anything in your ear smaller than your elbow." Sometimes his armor was helpful, sometimes it wasn't. He pulled his sketchbook out of his backpack and flipped through the pages slowly. So many drawings had towered over him on his chalky bedroom door as he had played the parts of his story in the little world of his room, until this morning when the dragon had stolen them all and escaped. Now what was he going to do? He stared out the window at the cars and trees and houses whizzing by. It's hard to go on a quest when a school bus is taking you in the opposite direction. Suddenly, Sir Henry's quest flew out of his hands. "What you got there, milk brain?" said Simon Snoot, holding the sketchbook away from Henry's grasp and opening it as a dozen other kids scrambled around him. "Whoa," said Simon, stretching the book wide with his greasy fingers. "What is that thing?" the boy beside him sneered. "It's the world's slimiest giant slug," thought Henry, but he didn't say it, because one of them might answer, "That doesn't look like a slug at all. It looks like a fat cucumber." Or even worse, "No wonder it looks just like you." Instead, he tried to yell, "Give it back!" in a knightly sort of voice, though it came out more like a mouse's squeak, and climbed over the seat to save his book. The boys surrounding Simon Snoot laughed, and Henry tumbled to the floor, holding on tightly to his helmet and swinging his feather duster sword. The bus screeched to a halt. Henry could hear Mr. Bruce's huge footsteps coming down the aisle. The boys scurried back to their places. "Simon Snoot!" It would be a tragic thing indeed for a boy to grow up to be a villain. Think of it. With your intelligence, you could be a president or an astronaut or a world-famous circus entertainer. Don't sully the honor of your good name by being a bully and a book stealer. He took the sketchbook away from Simon, who was looking red in the cheeks, and flipped through it. These are good, Mr. Bruce bellowed. Henry, you're a talented artist. You shouldn't keep that talent hidden away in a little book. You should let it out. He handed the sketchbook back to Henry, who held it protectively. The big art show is today, isn't it? Hoping to come by the cafeteria myself to take a look at all the artsy vegetable things you kids have been working on. You tell that lovely lunch lady of yours that Mr. Bruce wouldn't miss it. Now that's a damsel with a good noggin on her neck. Then he gave a final look of warning to the other boys and walked back to the front of the bus. Part of Henry wanted to die of embarrassment right there in the spot, and part of him felt happiness swell up in his chest like a bubble. Henry, you're a talented artist, whined Simon Snoot in a mocking voice, and a chorus of snickers followed. The bubble of happiness burst. Henry picked up his lunchbox, which had clattered to the floor when he jumped after Simon, and as he picked it up, he saw that there was a small hole in the corner of it. Very, very carefully, he cracked open the lunchbox and peeked inside. There, sitting quietly between his grapes and carrot sticks, was a jungle green spider. He snapped the lunchbox shut again and plugged up the hole with a gum wrapper that had been wedged into the seat beside him. He had a stowaway dragon disguised as a spider in his lunchbox. What now? Throw the lunchbox out the window? Tell his mother that an armadillo from the zoo had attacked the school bus and had taken his lunch hostage? Let the dragon run wild around the town of Squashbuckle while the only knight who could protect people from it was stuck in school all day? He couldn't do that. His chivalry wouldn't let him. But what if he let it come to school with him? If his dragon got loose, it would be like everyone seeing his sketchbook. Worse, all of his wonderful creations would be tromping out freely in the world for everyone to point at and laugh at and say, "What a weirdo that Henry Penwhistle is. Can you believe he drew that?" How he wished the dragon had just stayed on his door, closed up in his room where it belonged. Why had it escaped? Why? Mr. Bruce was wrong. Letting it out was the last thing in the world he wanted. Henry wrapped his arms around his lunchbox and hugged it tightly to his chest. Somehow, he would keep it hidden all day. He would keep the dragon from getting out, and when he got home from school, he would find the bottle of super glue and glue that dragon to the door once and for all so it could never come off. That was Sir Henry's quest, for today at least. When the bus pulled up to the school entrance, Henry waited until the rest of the kids spilled noisily into the parking lot, and then he stumbled down the aisle, gripping his lunchbox fiercely. "Be brave, Sir Henry," called Mr. Bruce as Henry was just about to step out the door. Henry whirled around. Did the bus driver know? Had he guessed what secret Henry was holding? "You have to be brave to be an artist," Mr. Bruce smiled and nodded at Henry's sketchbook. "It takes a fearless knight to imagine something and then let it out into the world. You never know what might happen to it. You never know what you might discover. Don't be scared. Go make something new." Henry carefully stepped off the bus and into the sunlight. He held a captive dragon under one arm and his quest under the other. Be brave, Sir Henry. Be brave. What do you think will happen next? Will Henry be able to keep his dragon spider in the lunchbox? What if it gets out? What will the other kids think? What will the dragon do? In order to find out what happens next, you'll have to join us for read-alouds. Starting on May 28th, here at Christ Center Library on the corner of Drake and LeMay at Christ Center Community Church in Fort Collins, Colorado. You can join us at 10 o'clock in the morning every Sunday to listen to Henry and the Chalk Dragon. And we will also have coloring pages, courtesy of the illustrator Benjamin Shipper.